Hello and welcome. My guest today is Andriy Dobryansky, Director of Communication at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Andriy, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you, and thank you for having me back on.
So, the talks are over, the war goes on, but a large-scale prisoner exchange is expected. Is this the outcome Trump was hoping for?
Oh, no, Trump just wants to pretend that he has an influential voice here, but as we all know, we're approaching 3 months since Ukraine agreed to a full and complete ceasefire. That is the first point on all of its peace proposals, both to the Trump administration and to the Russian side, and we have yet to see any serious ceasefire proposal from the Russian side. So I think Trump can keep on doing his rhetoric this week. We also know that he is expected to be in front of his fellow G7 members and NATO alliance members this month. I think they will be confronting him, not so much in the public, but in the private meetings during those meetings.
Do you expect the US to impose a new sanction, maybe some like sanction Lindsey Graham?
Yeah, I don't expect those to be voted on before the G7 and the NATO summit. I believe that during those summits is a good opportunity for the teams to talk about what kind of sanctions they want. At the moment, part of the sanctions that are being proposed by Lindsey Graham include several actions against European firms. I believe that's probably playing up to President Trump's dislike for the EU and wanting to tariff them. So we'll see what the actual legislation will be at the end, but I don't anticipate them to be voted on before President Trump actually has meaningful conversations with both the G7 leaders and the NATO summit.
Do you see these talks as a positive step or as a trap set by Russia?
Regardless of whether it's a trap or not, it is incumbent on Ukraine. Ukraine will always fly to meet with President Trump. Ukraine will always sit at the table if asked. And that is the imbalance here. Russia clearly doesn't feel that it's incumbent on them to participate in anything. So Ukraine has demonstrated to America and the Western alliance that they are always willing to sit down and talk. It is not Ukraine that's a warmonger. Ukraine is simply responding in kind to all the deaths that have been inflicted upon the civilian population of Ukraine.
Now to the US and the silence from one man. Donald Trump is unusually quiet after the Ukrainian strike. He hasn't posted any angry comments or blamed Ukraine for derailing peace efforts. Why do you think that is? Is this a thing of a shift in his position or just a calculated pause?
I think the big thing is he's going to be questioning his own staff and understanding why the United States isn't knowing about these attacks before they happen. And that's operational security for Ukraine. It also underscores if President Trump receives a full briefing on how Ukraine did this, this means that President Zelensky knew about the ability for Ukraine to do this while he met in the Oval Office, while President Trump was telling President Zelensky he didn't have the cards. President Zelensky knew that he had an operation that could be launched at any moment, and they decided to launch it and demonstrates just how many cards Ukraine has.
The President Zelensky says Russia loses will force Putin to negotiate, but isn't it more likely that Trump will be the one to push Russia to the table? Yesterday's drone strike on Russia airfield was extraordinary. Some even compare it to Pearl Harbor in terms of impact. Do you think this attack will really influence the path to negotiations?
Well, I've been really pushing back on my interviews about when Americans bring up Pearl Harbor, because I will remind Americans that Pearl Harbor was when America was not involved in war. It was not attacking anybody. And in this case, Ukraine has been the victim of attack and is simply responding in kind. As to how President Trump can push President Putin, I think that he needs to get on board with what the coalition of the willing is doing. So it's more sanctions, it's more military support, it's more of these victories for Ukraine on the battlefield. as well as I would bring up the international tribunal that's going ahead in the EU. But we just had another report by the Independent Commission at the United Nations that was released last week that the drones that were hunting civilians in Kherson amount to crimes against the humanity. We just saw a great drone attack that specifically targeted Russian military assets, not civilians. And here we have, in the same week, the United Nations documenting that crimes against humanity because Russia deploys its drones not on military targets, but to hunt out civilians.
How did you feel when you first saw the reports about Ukrainians' special operation?
I thought it was going to be a sad day for Ukraine because we know that how many Shaheds and drones were launched against Ukraine, as well as some ballistic missiles against Ukraine. And that was what I woke up to in the morning. I woke up to those accounts before the Shahed explosions were discovered by the United States or announced on social media. Then my day changed a little when American News reached out to me to schedule some interviews for the rest of the week. Later on in the day, we had a terror attack in the United States against several people, and that changed the American news producers as well. So my schedule has been all over the place this week, trying to figure out when my next interview is, just because of all the international news. And I didn't even mention the fact that there's an election in Poland that happened, and that's also something that's getting lost in the American news market. So for me, I woke up thinking it would be a sad day, incredibly proud of Ukraine's armed forces and all the people that put this response together. And as an American, very glad that so many tactical nuclear bombers were taken out of commission. This is something that Ronald Reagan would have dreamed of, the fact that they were eliminated, that we no longer have to worry about these kind of nuclear weapon launching airplanes being in commission.
Just the day before the talks, Ukraine destroyed a huge number of Russian aircraft. Some are calling it a moment that rewrites a military history. Many expected Russia to walk away from negotiations after that. Why do you think they showed up anyway?
At that point, they were already en route. We know that they're not going to seriously bring up any conversations about a ceasefire or a peace plan. But just like last time in Istanbul, as we heard from all the members of the Ukrainian delegation, if we get one Ukrainian a POW released, that's worth it to sit down with the Russians. So I'm glad that they at least brought that up. We also know that Ukraine brought up the issue and put down the names of hundreds of children that they would like returned right away. Also, another very important thing to sit down with the Russians about, no matter what the situation is. As far as waking up and seeing what's happening, I'm glad that the Russians saw that and understood how weak they are. But you are right that this is a moment for military history. A lot of military war colleges in the United States have been studying the war from 2014-2015 in Ukraine because that was done with a lot of technology from the past, tank warfare specifically, different maneuvers on the battlefield, moving troops around. This time, from the war that began in 2022, a lot of Western military academies are looking at the innovation that's happening. So it's not just the innovation with older equipment that happened before. Now we're using all new sorts of equipment. And the number one response that is being mentioned across the world is that many militaries will now have to invest in covering their airplanes and not leaving them exposed on airports.
And turning to the US economy and growing risk, JP Morgan warns that America's bond market could face serious trouble if Washington doesn't act on the national debt. What exactly is going on?
What has been said for decades in the United States is kicking the can down the road. So not addressing the problem right now. That is happening with the Republican spending bill that was passed by the House. It does not address the deficit that we are spending more than we are bringing in. In fact, it cuts taxes for rich people even more. It does do some cuts for programs here in the United States, such as Medicaid for those who aren't able to pay for their own health care. But that's not a savings in the long run because it simply adds to the debt. And that is why numerous Republicans, numerous conservatives, traditional conservatives are against this spending plan for the United States, and why the bond market actually responded last week when the House passed that legislation. They responded very negatively. Now, we do have a separate issue from the budget where there is a debt limit that the Congress has to vote on. President Trump has demanded that a repeal of the debt limit be included in future legislation. But right now, neither side, neither the Democrats nor Republicans are signing up for that because they always use that as a potential tool in their budget negotiations going forward. So we've already had the debt rating, the final debt rating of all the ones that were lowered for the United States. Moody's lowered its debt rating just in the past month. And I believe that it'll only get worse unless lawmakers in the United States begin to seriously address the issue that we have a bigger deficit that we